topic, very dear to my heart, but also so necessary in order to reach the Sustainable Development Goals and to get some action done. Because we need to amplify our voices, and we need to show how women can lead and are leading the call to leave no one behind. So please welcome to the stage ACHIM STEINER, who is the United Nations Development Program Administrator, and also PADMA LAKSHMI and INGRID SILVA.
Sorry. Yeah, bye. There we are.
Hi.
So, good morning, good afternoon, world out there. It's my great pleasure to be on the couch here this morning in New York City time with Padma LAKSHMI, New York Times bestselling author, top chef presenter, and also an advocate for much of the things that you have already heard quite a bit about this morning, the Sustainable Development Goals, the issues that affect us in so many different ways. You may not call them SDGs, but this morning our discussion here is going to particularly home in on the gender aspect of the Sustainable Development Goals and also peace, justice, and institutions. But I also have the great pleasure to introduce INGRID SILVA. We come from the same country, washed onto the shores of New York City together with Padma for different reasons at different times of our lives, finding ourselves living here now, doing very different things. And Ingrid's life story is an extraordinary one because she is now with the dance theater in Harlem, one of the ballerinas, I think, is that still the right way to say it, or principal dancers, and also an activist, and that is what brings us all three together onto this couch here this morning. We have had extraordinary opportunities that have come about because of maybe our parents or where life suddenly took us into a different direction. But together here this morning, we want to talk about things that we can do as individuals, as communities, that have something to do with what the Sustainable Development Goals aspire to address and where each one of us can make a difference. So Padma, if I may turn to you first, what is the story perhaps behind the story of Padma that led you to become engaged on issues that go far beyond what many people may know you for in terms of your profession, and that have made you also an advocate to work with us in the United Nations family and in UNDP?
You know, it's true, I kind of washed up here in New York when I was a child, and I know that that was because of a twist of fate. I could have been born to any family in India, and I think my life would have been much different. My mother had an education, and therefore she could get out of her bad marriage and have a second chance at providing a life for me and for her here in America. But for a lot of women in India, that is not the case. And so it always made me conscious from day one, since, you know, from when I was very young, about what that meant and what kind of privilege that we had because of that education. And you know, since then, when I went through puberty and I had an illness called endometriosis that I really didn't understand and that wasn't diagnosed until my mid-30s, and it's a female reproductive disorder that affects 200 million women worldwide, but many doctors don't even know how to treat it, you know, let alone what the surgeries involved. And so in digging deeper, and once I did get the treatment for that, I became thankful, but then I became angry that I went for 23 years without being properly diagnosed when treatment was available. You know, all that missed time that I spent in bed, about a week, a month, that I could have been helping my mother or studying for exams or playing volleyball. Anyway, so I started to get deeper into that and raise awareness so that other young women would not have to go through what I went through. And in digging really deep, I realized that there was a lot of misogyny in the healthcare profession, and that medical professionals like surgeons working on fibroids and endometriosis were really discriminated against, even if they were male, because they were working in a form that dealt with a female problem versus something like orthopedics or you know, the prostate or something. So that made me really awake to it. And then obviously, I wouldn't consider myself a political person, but I've become very political in the last couple of years, like many of us. And I'm an immigrant, and I feel very strongly that this country is great because immigrants built it. And so, like the UN, thank you. And so, like the UN, it is the culmination or the combination of the best of the world's cultures. And that's why it's great, not because of its military or its, economics, although the immigrant piece really plays a big role in the economics too. So I started working with the ACLU. I became an ambassador for immigration and women's rights for the ACLU a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago. And I've just gone deeper and deeper and deeper, and I would have never said that I would be sitting here today so active politically.
And that's exactly what we want to discuss this morning, because very often, I think, to people across the world, there are so many problems. They seem complex. There seem to be people who know very complicated ways of describing what sometimes are very simple things. Gender equality, SDG 5, may sound like some code word, when in fact the story you just told us is precisely the story that the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 is trying to address. There is gender inequality in our world. It manifests itself across so many different spheres, realities, experiences, and your story is just an amazing way to understand that it starts sometimes with a very individual experience and then takes us into an arena like this morning, where we are talking literally together to the world. Ingrid, may I turn to you for a moment? Another extraordinary story, both in terms of your own life, your profession, your success, your career, and yet you yourself described your life also as one that has become, in addition to being a professional dancer of the first order, an activist. Empower Her New York is something that you also set up. Tell us a little bit about that journey that took you from Brazil right here into the heart of New York City, and from being a young dancer who was essentially told what to do on the stage to becoming Ingrid, the person who now talks to the world about things that we're here to discuss.
I think it's really interesting to me because I've been always involved with the sports in Brazil. And I was a very energetic, young kid. And then my mom was like, yes, go to do soccer, go do swimming, go do gymnastics. And I was like, okay, one more activity. And then dance came along as just another activity. I've never dreamed to become a professional ballet dancer. That was never my idea. And my mom was like, yeah, I think it would be a new good thing for you to do. I started falling in love with ballet. I started at the age of 8 years old in a social project in the favelas of Brazil. And I think that really changed my life at the age of 12, not because I've never seen a dancer that looked like me, but I've started getting more engaged with the art form itself. Because ballet, in a sense, it's really hard physically and mentally. We are always being tested to our limits, and you really have to love to be involved with that. At the age of 18, one of my teachers were teaching in our social project in the favela of Brazil, and then Betania Gomes, a principal dancer from the Dance Theater of Harlem, walked in and saw me in the corner, and she said, you should audition for Dance Theater of Harlem. And I was like, what do you mean, Dance Theater of Harlem? And I had no idea. No. And at the age of 18, I came to New York, and out of 200 kids I auditioned. I would not be having this conversation with you guys because I didn't speak English at all. So even when I came, I was like, yeah, like literally laughing and yeah, great. But I had no idea. I had no idea what was happening. And I had the opportunity to meet Arthur Mitchell, who gave me my first job and the first opportunity to become who I am today, and I'm so grateful for that. I think in Brazil, my situation in my life, it's 1 in a million life opportunities. Where I come from, you don't have much access to arts, and I believe that arts change lives, how it changed mine. And Empower Her New York, it's my new passion. I'm very passionate about it. I founded with my partner, Helia Mohammedian. We were literally neighbors, walking our dogs, and we became very close friends. And we were like, let's do something for us women. As often we don't have a voice. We were always, scared to speak up. What this person's gonna think of me, what society is judging you to look like. You know, we are always supposed to be in a box. And I feel like in times right now, their box doesn't exist. You can become who you are at the point that you feel yourself fulfilled and empowered. So Empower New York became as a collaborative platform for us women to share our stories and connect with other women. We have takeovers on our Instagram every day with one woman from all over the world. They're sharing their story, they're sharing who they are, sharing their struggles, their inspirations, and that's how they connect to each other. We've connected now more than 1,000 women since December that we started. So I'm very passionate because it's not just an online digital place where you can find inspiration or you just scroll down to your Instagram, but where you actually find jobs, you connect to other women, you meet them. We host 3 events every year. We are working on our next event in October 22nd. And these online people get together in reality to meet and talk to each other and connect.
Can I just ask you briefly, how far or how close is the moment when you get up and do something with Empower Her New York and you stand on a stage and dance? Because you just made the point that art and culture has a lot to do also with self-awareness, with empowerment. Can you just describe briefly, where do these two connect for you most directly?
I think those two connected at a moment that as a dancer, you are always guided or tell what to do. You know, you never have that voice. It's like us women again. And seeing the world how it is right now, seeing how you can share in your platform and inspire someone else and change someone's life. I've started working with Brown Girls Do Ballet, which is an organization who helps Black ballerinas, young little girls, to be diverse and be included in the schools that you would not see them. To me, diversity came about when I was 12 and I went to different schools of dance and I saw that I was the only one. And I never questioned myself to understand why I was the only one. You know, most of the times you don't have access because it's not there. And we need places who provide access. So I think Empower New York came to the moment of me, why don't I go there and share a little bit more of this or give and create the space for other women to do the same?
And that's very much a part of trying to connect the individual and the power of one to do something with a global effort also to change sometimes the law, the political sphere. We have another goal. That's goal 16 in the Sustainable Development Goals that refers to peace, justice, and institutions. So Padma, if I may turn a little bit the conversation for a moment to that, because it's a very powerful goal. It is about the fundamental rights of societies. It's about what the United Nations was established at the time, which is to prevent war and ensure that peace has a chance. But it is also sometimes the fundamental constitutional rights associated, for instance, with being different, or not being what the mainstream thinks you should be. So LGBTI, something that I think you have also been engaged with, is just one illustration of where Goal 16 is about fundamental rights, it's about governance, it's about the laws of our countries, and perhaps you can say a couple of words about how that also intersects with your work and life.
It started very personally, as most things do. My best friend in high school was gay. I knew it, he knew it, everybody knew it. He came from a Latin family and he was terrified of admitting it to himself. And it was never discussed. And you know, when I started as a model in the fashion world, I had so many friends who were gay and queer and lesbian. And it really, to me, is an extension of how we discriminate with gender. Because anything that's other seems foreign and threatening. But you know, what the UN is really good at is saying, no, we are all alike. We may be different, but we deserve the same opportunities. And that's really at the core and root of where my passion comes from, whether it's with the whether it's the ACLU or the UNDP or, you know, my organization. It's all, I believe that, of course, we are not alike, you know. Somebody's born tall enough to be a jockey. Another one is born tall enough to be an NBA basketball player. A third one is completely different. But I think we all deserve the same opportunity for success. you know, that we should all have access to the same education, the same opportunities, the same resources, the same love and support and protection and peace and serenity to thrive, to succeed enough so that not only do we take care of ourselves and our family, but then we give back and we pour back into our community or our culture, you know, and pour down, sort of trickle down, so that we use our success to help the next generation. And this has always been a core belief of mine, like, what are you doing to help others? And I think, you know, it's like 500 million women still don't read around the world. They can't read. And, you know, I think it's something like 50 million don't have access to education. And that is crazy to me. So whether you're in Nigeria and Boko Haram is there, or whether you are in a village in India or in, you know, Afghanistan, all those young girls and boys, if they're gay or straight or whatever, should deserve the same access to soccer, you know, to the violin, to mathematics tutoring if they need it. Because that's better for all of us. If your child in Brazil has a better education, it's better for my child in the United States, because we're all connected. And so sooner or later, even if it's not in your backyard, it's going to be in your water, it's going to be in your air, and it's going to be in your laws. So I better be concerned about that child in Brazil, because it is like my child. That child is my child in a way. And that's how I think I've always seen the world.
I think you've just given the most beautiful explanation.
Thank you.
And you can see from the audience the most beautiful explanation of why we also have a United Nations. Because I attended this morning a meeting of the Broadband Commission, which may sound very strange, but it's actually about the fact that we have passed the point where 50% of the world's population is connected, but in very unequal ways, and there is still 50% who are not connected. Everything that will happen in the world in the next few years will depend on connectivity. So our task, together with CEOs from the private sector, with government leaders, is to actually think about that other half that hasn't yet had the opportunity. And that's very much in the spirit of my life, and that life of somebody else on the other side of the world is connected, even more so today. Yeah. Ingrid, in a brief reflection, what attracted you to the idea of the United Nations also, and perhaps to become involved in something like the Social Good Summit? Connecting in a sense that life that you lead as an individual here in New York to that larger spectrum of issues and connecting us to the rest of the world.
I believe in opportunity and education, also in your family's upbringing, because once you have an opportunity and you see yourself growing from that, you make it work. You make something for yourself, you know? An opportunity rare at times, it's really hard. And sometimes when you go to places, the diversity is not enough, which affects your self-esteem. And so if you are not fully prepared, the first thing you do is give up. You're not part of it because you don't feel included. And inclusion is something that we have to work in our world right now. It has to be inclusive so everybody has the opportunity.
And it's important to see people like you in those positions of power or, you know, prominence. I'm surprised I have a career in television. I don't know that many Indian women on TV. I just don't. I mean, outside of India, obviously.
I think in a funny sort of way, our three lives here are very interesting stories, and I want to, because we have to end our panel, address this out there to young boys and girls, wherever you may sit, and hopefully you have an internet connection that works. If you followed us here this morning, none of us would ever have guessed, nor would have our parents, that we would sit one day in the month of September 2018 on a couch here in New York City. And I think this is the power of individuals believing, first of all, in the opportunity, for that goal 16 to guarantee the right to have an opportunity, and also for the goal 5 on gender equality that we discussed this morning, that into the future it shouldn't be an accident anymore whether a boy or a girl can succeed. And in that spirit, thank you to both of you, Ingrid and Padma. Fantastic panel. Great to have you all here.
Thank you. you. Nice to meet you.
I think we go. Thank you.